Hello and welcome to Fault Lines Special. I am JAWAD TEHAMI. Today we are going to talk about the incessant rains and the consequent massive floods that have wreaked havoc across Pakistan. About 116 districts out of 160 total districts in the country have been directly hit by these massive floods, and the record rainfall has also been recorded over the last couple of weeks in particular, and these have resulted in massive floods. They've caused huge destruction, particularly when we talk about the Balochistan province, which was initially hit by these massive floods. Later on, these floods hit Sindh province. And now we have seen there has been immense destruction by these floods in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well as in southern Punjab. Now, according to the National Disaster Management Authority, 982 people have lost their lives due to these floods, and over 1,456 people got injured. Unfathomable losses have been accrued to the infrastructure, houses, livestock, and crops. Now, the government has come into action right from the start. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has announced 38 billion rupees for the said purpose in order to help the flood affected people, in order to provide these funds for the rescue and the relief of the flood affected people as well. And also he had been visiting back to back, particularly when we talk about Sindh province. Yesterday he visited Sakhar area, and today he went to Sujawal district in Sindh province. And Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari was accompanying yesterday the Prime Minister over there. They had the interaction with the flood affected people, including women and children in particular, and they have urged the philanthropists and the industrialists to come to the fore in order to help the affected population over there, both in Balochistan as well as in Sindh. And also the army is also playing its part in order to provide the rescue and relief to the flood affected people. Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa visited Sindh province yesterday, and today he went in to Balochistan in order to review the rescue and the relief efforts being undertaken over there in the province. Let's talk about the flood situation overall in the country, what measures the authorities are taking, and what could be done in a better way, and what could be the possibilities of providing relief and rescue, and later on the rehabilitation to the people who have been badly affected by this particular deluge. To talk more about this, we are joined by Mr. Shahid Rind, who is a political analyst and a senior journalist who is joining us from Quetta. He's joining us on a phone line. Mr. Rind, thank you very much for your time at Fault Lines today. So starting off with the situation in Balochistan, which was initially hit by these massive floods, we saw that Balochistan was completely disconnected from rest of the country because of the immense damages which were caused to the road and the rail links over there. What is the situation right now over there? What is the estimate of the people who've been displaced after this massive deluge over there? Mr. Rind, can you hear me, please? Okay, we've lost the connection with Mr. Shahid Rind. We'll try to reconnect to him. And now we are also joined by Mr. Khalil Runja, who is a coordinator, Welfare Association for New Generation. He is joining us on Skype. Mr. Runja, thank you very much for your time. at fault lines. So let's start with the situation in Balochistan, and particularly when we talk about these incessant rains, as Information Minister Maryam Aurangzeb has said that this time around massive and record rainfall has been recorded in the history of the country. How do you see this? Do you relate this particular phenomenon with the climate change impacts that are causing havoc in Pakistan?
Yes, we are also trying to know climate change is very issue in Pakistan, also in Balochistan. Okay, first in Las Bela, very heavy rain in Las Bela, and other side in other times rain. Because our Las Bela's road also closed due to main RCT road, Quetta to Karachi, very heavy rain. And this time rain is are stopped in Las Bela, but many roads are closed, many link roads are closed due to this floods activities are not continue.
Right. So what is the situation of the rescue and the relief activities over there in the province? Mr. Runja, can you hear me, please? I think there is a little bit of technical fault. As far as we know, the telecommunication services over there in Balochistan are also badly affected. We'll try to reconnect to Mr. Khalil Runja as well. And when we talk about the concern which has been shown by the international community, because Pakistan has urged the international community and the international organizations to come to the fore in order to help Pakistani authorities, in order to avert this catastrophic situation that has caused immense loss, not only to the lives and the properties, but also to the general living of the people. It has caused immense damage to the livelihoods. People have lost their livelihoods as well, and their houses have been either partially damaged or completely submerged under these flood torrents. Now, there is an estimate by the government that at least 72.36 billion rupees are required for the immediate relief. We'll talk about this particular estimate and what the international organizations have said regarding this. We are now again joined by Mr. Khalil Runja, Coordinator for Welfare Association for New Generation. Mr. Runja, when we talk about Pakistan's request to the international community for coming to the fore in order to help Pakistani authorities to avert this catastrophe, there is an estimate by the government that is 72.36 billion rupees that are required immediately in order to deal with this situation. We see a number of international organizations coming to the fore, announcing, for example, the United Nations has is going to launch a flash appeal of 160 million. Likewise, the World Bank has announced $350 million in aid. World Food Program, $110 million. Asian Development Bank has announced $20 million, as well as the UK aid has announced 1.5 million pounds in aid for the flood affectees. Do you think this particular announcement, the kind of amount which has been announced by these international organizations, is sufficient to mitigate the impact of this massive deluge?
Yeah, I think it's a very good news to different donors come to Balochistan and in Pakistan and world flood affected communities. Government should allow to him, they come to in Balochistan, they work with flood affected peoples.
Right. So when we talk about climate change in particular, Pakistan has been one of those vulnerable countries, the top 10 vulnerable countries which are paying the price because of the climate change. But indeed, Pakistan remains to be the lowest emitter of carbon. So what Pakistani authorities need to do in the short term as well as in the long term in order to avert the impact of the climate changes that are happening here in the region? Let's talk to Mr. Shahid Rind, who is also joining us. Mr. Shahid Rind, when we talk about the situation in Quetta, Mr. Shahid, can you hear me, please?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, so we were talking about the situation in Balochistan province, which was completely cut off from the rest of the country due to damage to the road and the rail links over there. Now the relief and the rescue activities are underway over there. What exactly is that? What is required by the flood-affected people over there at this particular time?
I think whatever is the requirement of the flood-affected people, that is not fulfilling by the provincial government and the PDMA. Right now, the biggest issue is to access in the areas is very difficult for provincial government and these flood activities. Basically, the issue is with the capacity building of the Provincial Disaster Management Authority and the rest district administration. They have no idea how to handle this situation, because Balochistan is the biggest province and the half of the Pakistan which is affected right now from the floods. And provincial government have not that much resources and not that much capacity building to get all the things done on time. Right now, I see and I feel the only force who is doing a tremendous job, that is Pakistan Army. Today, Chief of Army Staff visited District Lasbela. District Lasbela is very badly affected in the recent rains and floods. But interestingly, not a provincial government representative, not a federal government representative bothered to visit. Lasbela is the same place where General Sarfraz Shaheed sacrificed his life in the early days of the rain and flood, where he went in the area and on the ground situation. He was inquiring that situation where he sacrificed his life. After that, today, Chief of Army Staff General Commander JAWAD Bajwa and Commander 12 Corps General Asif Ghafoor both visited Lasbela. But I don't know why provincial government is hesitating to visit Lasbela. There are some political reasons maybe, but I think that
right,
political reasons need to be...
When we talk about the response by the provincial government and the federal government in particular, when we talk about the federal government, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif went to Balochistan province a couple of times, and he had his visits scheduled over there, but just because of the bad weather, he couldn't go on the schedule. But later on, he visited Balochistan province. But when we talk about the scale of these incessant rains over the past many weeks, we see that, and there have been clear-cut reports that these rains have been first time ever witnessed in the last 10 years. So no matter how much preparation the provincial government might have had, this catastrophe would have definitely posed enough challenges. Do you agree?
I think I agree with this point. Balochistan never seen this kind of rains and floods. I think I have told with many elders in the different districts and different areas, they call it, they have never ever seen this kind of floods and rains. Even in the last 36 hours in Quetta city, there was continuous rain, which I have seen in my life in the 36 hours with the full swing raining in the Quetta city. So you can imagine where we have some basic facilities, at least in Quetta. So you can imagine this kind of situation if it's in interior Balochistan. How can it damage the infrastructure and the other things? But the basically issue is with Balochistan. After 18th Amendment, it's not possible. We blame federal government. We blame Islamabad and Punjab. After 18th Amendment, this was the responsibility of provincial government to build a capacity of Provincial Disaster Management Authority and other departments which can overcome this situation. So
right, your point is well taken. Mr. Shahid Rind, I'll come back to you. Please stay with us. I am also now joined by Mr. Nadir Gul Baresh, who is Chief Operating Officer, Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund. Mr. Nadir Gul, thank you very much for your time at Fault Lines. So when we talk about this phenomenon, how do you see this one, particularly as far as the entire nook and the corner of the country has been hit by massive floods, never seen before in the history of Pakistan? As many experts have said, these are much bigger in scale as compared to that of the 2010 floods even.
Thank you very much for providing me this opportunity. I agree with you. This flood is is much bigger that we have seen in our life during last 4 decades or 5 decades. 2010 flood, if you just analyze, it hit 20% area of the country. Like in Balochistan, only 12 districts were affected in 2010. But at this time, almost 30 districts have been affected in Balochistan, and overall more than 100 districts have been hit across the country in all 4 provinces. So it's really a gigantic disaster as far as the flash flood are concerned. And I think I would also mention that it's much beyond the capacity of government, particularly the resources required to rehabilitate. As you know, that more than 140 dams have been hit by this, and they have been damaged. More than 3,000 kilometer roads have been washed out. More than 600,000 houses, shelter have been completely wiped out of the area. So it's really a gigantic disaster that we need to look at, and I think everyone has to join hands, both within Pakistan. Everybody has to contribute, and also I think you are well aware that Pakistan is not much contributor to carbon emission. We only contribute 0.9% of the carbon emission across the world. But as far as the disasters are concerned, be that flash flood or earthquake or drought, we are 8th country hit by the effect of climate change. So I think it's also responsibility of the international community to contribute significantly in this disaster.
Okay, when we associate this particular phenomenon that is happening in Pakistan right now, causing such an immense damage, is it necessary that we associate it with the climatic change that is happening in the region, or is it because of the mismanagement over the years as well? Because in many research papers and many experts are of the view that annually Pakistan loses a huge amount of water, which should naturally not be lost, because if there were dams in place, so such a massive amount of water could have been reserved. What do you say?
Well, I think overall effects are of climate change, I would say, because these rains, torrential rains, they are much heavier, like it's more than 87% of normal in some provinces. So the climate change effect cannot be ruled out in this discussion. But I think I would also agree with you that we should have built more dams to conserve this water, to preserve this water, because we are also, unfortunately, there are areas where you confront flood at one time, and second time you confront severe drought. So I think we need to conserve every drop of water for longer period. And also I think we need to invest in integrated natural resource management. Like I appreciate government of Pakistan also for this 10 billion tsunami tree. It's a great contribution, I think, and it will have impact on reducing the effect of drought and flash floods in future. But I think much more needs to be done in order to conserve water. So construction of dams and also construction of flood protection walls. I think that's very important, because many areas, like we have seen in 2010, they were washed out. Now in 2022, they are again washed out. So we have to work out strategies for short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Secondly, I think we did not learn much lesson from 2010 flood. We have constructed houses on the same riverbeds and on the ways where water crosses. And also we did not raise the level of houses. Like, I have been to Sindh just last week. I have been to Balochistan. What I have seen in 2010, I have seen it again, that people, at the end of the day, their place of living after the flood hit area, those are roads or the beds of canal. So I think that which are 4 or 5 feet higher than the ground. So I think we need to do a planning that this time when we start, rebuilding, reconstruction of houses, I think we need to raise from ground level at least 4 to 5 feet from ground level. So I think we need to take certain measures to ensure that we don't.
This is a very important and interesting point that you have raised, that we haven't learned the lessons from the last deluge back in 2010. then let's talk to Mr. Khalil Runja. So, Mr. Runja, as Mr. Nadir Gul has just mentioned, that Pakistan hasn't learned the lessons from the last deluge back in 2010, and the people are still making the encroachments. Many people have lost their properties and also come in the harm's way just because they went on to construct things in the rivers or the streams ways. Do you agree with this? And also, when we talk about the climate change impacts, in particular on Pakistan, do you think this phenomenon necessarily has to deal with the climate change impact on Pakistan and has nothing or lesser to do with the mismanagement or lesser construction of the dams so that we could conserve water in a better way? Mr. Runja, can you hear me, please? I think, unfortunately, we have lost the connection with Mr. Runja. Let's go to Mr. Rind. Mr. Rind, what's your say on this particular thing? When we talk about climate change and the impacts on Pakistan, rather, if we have would have constructed much bigger dams and more dams across the country, so these floods could have been avoided and the water could have been better managed and conserved.
I agree with you, and as far as Balochistan is concerned, I think 10 to 15 years back, federal government started a project, 100 dams project, which is called here in Balochistan as a 100 dams, a small dams project. But the thing is, the corruption ratio which is going on in Balochistan from last decades, last 2 to 3 decades, contractor association representative gives a video, and he clearly said, when we get all the funds, we will make good dams and good buildings. But because of the corruption ratio, they just get the 50% of the amount to make some dams. Because of that, in normal rains, we have seen Balochistan face that dam where there are many dams which flushed out in last 2 to 3 years. This year, we have extraordinary rains which I have never seen. I have never heard from anyone to last 30 to 40 years we face this kind of situation. So this time there was an extraordinary situation, but with the climate change, the corruption is the biggest issue of Balochistan.
So that's the case of Balochistan. It could be that case according to your view, but what about the rest of the country, other 3 provinces?
Other 3 provinces, we have I wish to say, maybe someone agree with it or differ with it, Kalabagh Dam. We are not in a position to make all the provinces to come on one page and make some dam. We every time bigger or mega projects, we make them controversial. When we make biggest issues and biggest mega projects controversial, they become liability for the country, not for the profit of the country.
That is one case of its kind, because there could have been a massive displacement of people, the natives from that particular area. That is the one aspect, specifically if we talk about the Kalabagh Dam, but there could be other much bigger or the alternate options to that one as well.
For that, you always need, for biggest dams, you need the finances. And right now, what is the economical situation of Pakistan? We are not in a position to build the biggest dams in this economical situation, I think, and I believe. We will try, but until or unless our economy will be not good, how can we invest in biggest dams? So we have a right now option as the small and the medium dams in the different provinces, even in Balochistan. If there is some less corruption, so these dams can preserve too much water, which are 100 dams project that was tremendous for Balochistan and the need and the requirement for Balochistan. But because of corruption, we have lost all that project.
Beg your pardon for the interruption. When you talk about the lack of the will or the kind of rampant corruption that you just mentioned, what about the encroachments, the people themselves making constructions in the harm's way? And when such phenomenal incessant rain happens once in 10 years, let's say, so they are naturally in the harm's way, and they will definitely be brought down because of these massive deluge that hit once in 10 years, let's say.
As far as Balochistan concerned, we have one biggest metropolitan city, that is Quetta. We have faced the encroachment issue all over the Balochistan in just Quetta. Nothing, the rest of Balochistan have no encroachment issue. But the issue is we have never worked on the maintenance of the bridges and the national highways. Because of that, right now the district Lasbela's Tehsil hub is disconnected with Karachi. That bridge was in a miserable condition from years, but not a single elected representative allocated fund for that maintenance of that bridge. That is the completely mismanagement by the National Highway, Provincial Communication and Works Department. Right now, when I'm talking to you, where Nadirgul mentioned you, 1,500 kilometers highways are washed out in these recent floods. But Balochistan's Provincial Minister Communication and Works is not present in Balochistan right now. He's on a world tour. So this is our interest in Balochistan.
So does this raise a question on the quality of the material that is also used in the road links which connect the major cities in the country?
I told you which bridge can connect, District Lasbela's Tehsil hub with Karachi. That was demolished in recent floods and rains. That was in a miserable condition from years. Not it's happened suddenly or in a day or in 2 or 3 days.
That
2
calls
years
for continuous and regular maintenance of the infrastructure as well. So let's talk to Mr. Nadir Gul. So what your organization, the Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund, doing at this moment in time to provide relief to the flood affected people, not only in a specific particular province, but across Pakistan? And are you also satisfied with the relief and the rescue activities which are undertaken by the authorities?
Well, Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund has, in past also, in 2005 earthquake, in 2010 flood, and then again in 2013 there was flood, in COVID. We have always supported our communities. In this flood, we just started our operation with 250 million rupees resources from our own, and we are covering 12 districts across country, 4 districts in Sindh, 4 Balochistan, 2 KPK, and 2 Punjab. So we are targeting some 81,000 families, more than 500,000 people, and the relief which is required currently, as you know, it's food, shelter, water, sanitation, hygiene kits, and also the livestock medication and vaccination. So these are urgent priorities in flood affected areas. I have been to Sindh, I have been to Balochistan. I think there are problems in delivering flood relief items to the affected, because mostly in these last 1 month, several times, roads have been blocked. Balochistan has been completely cut off. In Sindh, some areas they were inundated, so access was an issue. So we have tried to reach out to those areas, but as far as overall efforts of relief are concerned, I think I'll also appreciate Pakistan Army, the law enforcement agencies, administration, that along with the rescue, they are also helping these people, they are delivering relief. But I think the needs are tremendous. It's a huge catastrophe, and I think it requires a lot of resources. And still, areas are cut. The access issue still prevails in some areas. So a lot of efforts need to be done to provide relief to these people. Secondly, Alhamdulillah, these rains have stopped now. So it's now time, people will start, constructing houses where water has flushed out. So early recovery has to overlap with the relief now. So it's a gigantic catastrophe, but the resources are quite meager. We have seen even the international community till yesterday only $500 million were committed by a humanitarian community, by World Bank and by others. But that's not significant. It requires billions of dollars to rehabilitate, infrastructure, construction of more than 600,000 houses for poor people. And again, look at the agriculture and livestock. So a lot of damages have been done. So that would require a lot of resources, infrastructure for revitalizing agriculture in those areas, providing support for seed fertilizers, so that at least the next season could be caught.
Right, beg your pardon for the interruption. Mr. Nadir Gul, we are now joined by another participant from the UK, Mr. Syed Lakhte Hasnan, who is the chairman, Muslim Hand. Mr. Syed Lakhte Hasnan, thank you very much for your time at Fault Lines. Pakistan is facing a huge challenge of massive floods and the damage and the destruction which have been caused by these massive floods. Pakistani authorities have urged the international community to come to the fore in order to help Pakistani authorities to deal with this catastrophic situations. Number of international organizations are coming and announcing the aid for Pakistani authorities to provide relief and rescue. What can the overseas Pakistanis do at this particular time for the flood affected people in Pakistan?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Sayyid Lakhti Hassan, Chairman Muslim Hand speaking. I'm in Karachi now. Came for the flood relief and going back after a few days to telling the people of Europe, particularly UK, that what we have seen, very heavy rains and the floods affecting the many millions of people. And this is a duty of the government to promote it more and more and getting involved to the international media. They also give the news to the people around the world, not just Pakistanis. This is a huge devastating and destruction going on. This is the Muslim Hands also, alhamdulillah, busy in all parts of the countries. And we are busy in South Punjab, in Zafargarh, in Layar, in Dera Ghazi Khan, in Rajanpur, in Rujan. Then we are busy in Sindh, in Khairpur. Then we are busy in Badin, in Karachi also. The last 2 weeks you have seen the heavy flood there. And also we are busy in Balochistan and Jalmaksi and many other areas. Then also we are busy in the KPK. Today, outside of the Jarsada, people there were sitting in the green belt of this motorway. Alhamdulillah, about 14,000 people, they are in the green belt of the motorway. We gave them food, cooked food today. And also we have started our medical camps everywhere. And this is the needs of the time. The governments come forward and international media come forward. And our media also give the reports to the international media and to tell the people that's what's going on here. I hope so. Like 2005 and 2010, we had a very severe earthquake and the floods. That international community came forward to help us. I hope so, inshallah, they will also to come help us. Without giving the information, people, they cannot actually come out to help. They survived in houses, they are wiped out, the targets, they are wiped out, their cattle and other things also been killed. Many hundred people also been killed. This is a very important thing that these people come forward, that the international community come forward to help these people. Thank you.
Right, Mr. Sayyid Lakhti Hasnan, Chairman, Muslim Hand, joining us from, you are in Karachi and your organization is indeed doing a commendable job in order to provide relief and rescue to the flood affected populace here in Pakistan. Let's talk to Mr. Rind. Now, the government of Pakistan, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has also established the fund, the flood relief fund, and he is also urging the overseas Pakistanis as well as the philanthropists and the industrialists to give that aid that could be used to provide relief and rescue to the people. Now, the government has also announced 38 billion rupees for the said purpose. Keeping in view the kind of the scale this particular damage is caused, do you think this amount would be sufficient to meet the urgent need?
Yes, maybe this amount will be sufficient to give the flood-affected people right now. But the basic issue in Balochistan is the infrastructure, which is completely damaged. Quetta is completely disconnected with the rest of the country, not on a one part, not in a single area. That is disconnected in multiple bridges, 50 meters which are washed out. For that, you need a huge amount, and that amount is possible to for federal government to give provincial government right now. For that, we need to federal government also facing a challenges and on the side of economy earlier. So I think without the support of international community and the humanitarian organizations and the development organization on the UN level, it will be difficult for the provincial government of Balochistan and the federal government of Pakistan to rehabilitate these peoples and rehabilitate all the infrastructure in Balochistan.
So there are a number of international organizations I already mentioned. Now the United Nations is going to launch a flash appeal of $160 million. The World Bank similarly has announced $350 million in aid. World Food Program, as well as the ADB, as well as the UK aid. We are getting the calls from the Muslim Brotherly countries, including Turkey, UAE, and Iran. Do you think Pakistani nation, being the resilient, as being dubbed repeatedly by the Pakistani authorities, we came out victorious in a way or the other back in 2005 after the massive earthquake, and then we saw after the 2010 deluge as well?
We have a strong power of resilience. We have seen it not in once or twice or thrice. We have faced biggest disasters in past, and we have overcome all these. And I think, and inshallah, we will overcome this situation also. But now this is the time we need to learn a lesson from our past experiences. We need to work on a climate change. We need to work on a capacity building of our organizations. Right now in Balochistan, the only force who responded very beautifully in this disaster situation, that is the Balochistan Levies Force, which is trained recently by Pakistan Army, which on ground performed very beautifully. So as we build the Levies Force under the training of Pakistan Army, we need to work on other provincial departments like Communication and Works Department, like Irrigation Department and the PDMA. After 18th Amendment and after 7th NFC Award, I think Balochistan now must realize this thing. They cannot blame Islamabad and the Lahore and the Karachi for their deprivation or deprived situation of Balochistan.
Mr. Rind, your point is well taken. So what measures do you suggest could be taken immediately in order to build the capacity of these provincial departments in particular?
That is the responsibility of our government and the politicians and the legislators. When after 18th Amendment there was a requirement of legislation in Provincial Assembly Balochistan, but our MPAs and MNAs and senators, they are running against the winds, and they just need the development funds. And in development funds, if they give a priority.
Mr. Rind, can you hear me, please? Unfortunately, I think we have lost the connection with Mr. Shahid Rind. We'll try to reconnect to him. Now, as we were talking about the urgency of this particular catastrophic situation and the kind of amount which is required initially to provide rescue and relief to the flood affected population here in Pakistan. There are certain government estimates, and now when we talk about the climate change phenomenon impacting Pakistan, there is also a statement by the climate change minister, Ms. Sherry Rahman, who says that our cities are not designed for such heavy downpours without any break. And now, indeed, it's the 8th spell of monsoon rain. Usually 3 to 4 monsoon rain spells happen every year in Pakistan. So that calls for capacity building. Beg your pardon, as Mr. Shahid Rind was alluding to the fact that it's the time to build that capacity of the provincial departments and also chalk out new policies and implement them. And there must be urgency regarding that one as well. And the participants in the show also urge the philanthropists and the international organizations to come to the fore and provide the maximum aid that they can so that the catastrophic situation in Pakistan could be averted in time and the people are brought back to their normal life. With this note, we come to the end of today's show. Thank you for being with us. Until the next show, take very good care of yourselves.